Welcome back. So today we're going to take a look at the BQEYZ KB1. A bit of a flashback from July of 2018, but I will sort of explain that I was looking for the TRN STM, I was looking for the CVJ, and the Better Audio store on Amazon said, well, I don't have either of those, but are you interested in the KB1? I said, well, I never actually tried a BQEYZ, so I will give that a shot. And it has a really good reputation. And I know a lot of people like the brand, so I was excited to give it a try, even though it's a year and a half or so late. But so we'll go with that. So I will say that this was kind of a in-between time. I was waiting for my Blon BL-05S, the C10 Pro, waiting for the CVJ. So this one is actually next. This is the CVJ CSA that a store was nice enough to send me. So this one is what I'll be listening to for the next few days at least. So very glad that one showed up, and I know people have asked a lot about that one as well. So let's talk quickly about the KB1. And the first thing you notice about the KB1 is if you actually go back and look at reviews, they're all kind of short, a bit terse. And I'll sort of explain why that is in a minute. But so on Amazon right now, on the Better Audio store on Amazon, KB1, $39.99. It has a lot of competition at that price, so I'm not sure how many people are going to be running after it, but it's certainly, for metal shells, black like this, in this unique configuration of 2 dynamic drivers and 1 BA, it's kind of unique. But again, there's just so much competition at that price range that you have to really be in the mood for the KB1 to go spend that kind of money for it. But it's very nice though. So this is the cable. It's kind of your standard black plastic coated 4-core-ish cable, kind of small 2-pin adapters. I tried different cables, not so much for the sound, but more so for the fit, which we will get to in a little bit. So quickly, let's kind of run through the gist of the BQEYZ KB1s. So the first thing, and I'll say why some of the reviews are short, it's very polite, very likable. It's an easy listening thumper. So the bass is actually elevated. Sub bass is kind of boosted quite a bit. So it definitely is. It feels like a 2DD as opposed to, I think I had a nice HCK in the same configuration. And I never could understand why they turned the bass down as much as they did. But this is a 2DD and it actually feels like it. So that was good. But in general, there's just nothing kind of outrageously wrong with it. And kind of people got it and reviewed it and are like, yeah, it kind of checks all the boxes, doesn't offend anyone, doesn't fatigue you. There's nothing, tonality that's just so far off that it makes it, not a buy. It's just very polite, bass and treble. It's very likable for that same reason, is you can just listen to it for hours and you're never going to get fatigued. It's not going to sound shouty. The bass, I'll kind of admit that it thumps a little harder than the treble side, so if you're sensitive to that side, then yeah, it'll eventually fatigue you, but it's actually really kind of nice. So sound-wise, it's got this 2DD warm, thick sound, and as I said, the treble is a little bit rolled off, a little bit more constrained than I would have picked, so the whole thing kind of slants bass-wise, or maybe we'll do it that way. So it feels a little darker than it probably is, just because you don't have this stronger treble to balance it out. So I kind of had this little dark sensation about it, but it's not all that bad. It's just missing a little bit of the sparkle on the treble to really balance out the 2DDs kind of thumping in your ear. So the sub bass is definitely present, and it will come out to play when songs call for it, but the sub bass is boosted, but not really as much as it would appear to be with a 2DD. I think they intentionally do that. The tuning, it'll definitely rumble when you ask it to rumble, but normally you don't really notice it a whole lot. It's especially with a softer mid bass. It's for 2018, it's kind of punchy, but in 2020 it's a bit soft. So you had this kind of restrained sub bass, softer mid bass. That whole section is just kind of soft, and it bleeds well into the mids. So for your mids, you end up with this full bassy, thick sounding vocals. All those lower female, male vocals, those are about as thick and full sounding as you're ever going to want them. And I think for me, that's where that dual DD really kind of shines, is right in that midsection. And if you don't mind all that bass bleeding into your mids, it's that style. Someone was just asking me about an upgrade for the KZ ES4, and ES4 kind of has this same slower, thicker, bassier sound, and this one is kind of in that. And it's kind of that year thing. Is back then, a lot of these hybrids had that slightly darker, slightly bassier sound, and this one was kind of in that realm of the ES4. But I think the ES4 treble was actually a little more elevated than this one. It's slightly more fatiguing, and this one is rolled off a lot more. But if you're looking for that midsection that's really thick and bassy and smooth, the KB1 pretty much hit that big checkbox there. So it's not overly detailed. The vocals are really clear, and at first glance you'll be like, wow, that's super detailed. But then when you actually go look at the detailed, you'll kind of realize that some of them are kind of missing, but not bad. There's a lot of clarity considering how much bass there is. And like I said, it's sort of a dynamic bass. It's not all the time in your face. When the bass is in the song, you feel it, but just vocals, kind of quiet vocals, it's sort of, there's a really nice clarity and transparency to the vocals, and they will come off kind of detailed, definitely detailed for 2018. 2020 maybe a little short, but sound really good. So the vocals are offset a bit, and again, this is this polite, so the vocals are offset from your ears a bit. So say you got your ears here, the vocals are kind of just offset a little bit. And I think a lot of people like that presentation. But at the same time, you have this 2018 soundstage. So your ears will be here, the vocals are kind of right in front of you, and then you'll have the instruments sort of in back. And it really brings back kind of memories of a lot of these sound stages at the time, where people were saying the mids were hiding the instruments, you're losing the instruments in the vocals. A lot of those things, I think, all happen on the KB1, and it's just the way that tuning did at the time. It wasn't all that strange to have that happen, and so that's what I noticed more, is the vocals are very strong, but then if you're trying to follow the instruments and where they are, it's a lot harder because they're literally right behind the vocals. So something to be aware of. So the treble, again, like the bass, it's very polite. It's kind of very rolled off, restrained, non-fatiguing. But at the same time, it came off a bit flat for me. It needs to soar a little bit, and especially on the pianos and the snares, they just kind of come off as soft and not quite as hard edge as I'm getting tainted by the KZ ZSTX and the ZSN Pro X. These 2020, it's kind of faster dynamic drivers, a little more edgier sound to it. It just feels that, especially the treble part, just kind of felt a lot like 2018 as opposed to 2020. Definitely lower voices over higher voices because they take advantage of that fullness, bassiness, a lot of that bleed. So I definitely preferred male lower vocal, even female lower vocals over some of these higher female vocals on this one. So the soundstage, like I talked about, it sounds a bit dated. It's very within your ears. Everything is kind of layered, almost depth-wise, kind of front to back, and the instruments become hidden behind the vocals. It barely goes beyond your ears, and there's this one, sometimes the song, you'll kind of get caught between going inside your ears and outside your ears, and it got sort of annoying where the sound was coming from, because you kind of you lose the illusion of this seamless music playing in front of you as it's kind of bouncing between your ears. But Cornflake Girl by Tori Amos. For some reason, that one sounded really good. It was very much beyond your ears, and it all kind of sounded seamless, but that was kind of a rarity. It can definitely go there. I just wasn't sure what. Definitely something odd with the soundstage, and it definitely felt like 2018, and that was very much, if this was 2018, people would say, oh, it's kind of an average to slightly above average soundstage because it's filled out your ears and the vocals were nicely centered. 2020, it doesn't quite stand up as well as it should. So for the fit, I couldn't figure this one out either. I tried cables, tips. For some reason, this sort of horizontal layout just didn't exactly work for my ears, and I don't know if it was just some of this hitting some part of my ear. It never really felt like it was inserted properly and it was gonna stay there. And I don't think I ever read another review that said that these had a fit problem, but for me, they always had this feeling that they were just about to pop out, and I kept on pushing them in. And the original tips were silicone, so they were even slippier than these are the KZ tips. So yeah, I think fit, it's number 4, but I think that's more of my problem as opposed to a general problem with the KB1. So that's about it. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll get to the CVJs next, and hopefully the Blon BL-05s will appear, the C10 Pros, and we'll go from there. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.